How are we doing, everybody? Good evening. Welcome along to another Paranormal Monkey podcast. How are we doing? Hope you've had a good Monday. Welcome along. So, we're going to get right into it this evening. We're going to be talking all things the cage. Well, kind of all things. There's some things we're not going to be talking about, but it is going to be a bit of a not controversial area, I think, but it will open up some people's eyes. Let's put it that way. And my guest this evening is the lovely Mark Davis from Paranormal Reason. Hello.
Hello there. Good evening, Justin.
Yeah, it's first of all, welcome along. I say first time you've been on the podcast. It's great to have you on. Before we start diving into, I suppose, everything to do with the cage that you've researched, do you want to say a little bit about your organization, your group, and yourself and Lauren, and how you go about things with regards to the paranormal?
Okay, right. I mean, people know me as Mark and Laura from Paranormal Reason. Paranormal Reason, we've never introduced ourselves as Paranormal Reason in our lives. It's just literally a social media handle. I mean, what we thought really was Laura and Mark just doesn't say what we do. Yep. So it's just if we're going to put stuff on social media, post it like what we're doing, etc. We needed a handle. Paranormal Reason, we've had a name for a number of years. The reason why we chose it has two meanings. And it's down to you, the listener, what meaning you take it is. We're not going to tell you what we think it means. It has two meanings, and that's all there is, really. What we take a holistic view of the paranormal. We don't really actively go out investigating. We haven't been out at night time for almost 19 years now.
Really?
We only do daytime stuff.
Yeah.
Primarily, we take an observational approach. We'll just go out on a day-to-day business, and sometimes, Laura will say, "I'm picking up something here, or I've just had this, just had that," and that sometimes develops off into an area we research, revisit, and find out more stuff. And we feel odd saying Laura will pick up stuff because Laura herself still sees herself as more an investigator rather than actually anybody picking up stuff. So, yeah. But it gives us an edge. And as we've sort of gone on our journey, we've taken more of a step back. We find stuff approaches us. I mean, for example, we got another case locally we're working on at the moment where, I won't bore you with the details, where some of America got in touch. Or have you heard about this? Turns out they weren't aware where we lived. It's happened a mile away from where we're living now.
So so you talk about
things like that.
So you talk mainly, obviously, you're doing a lot of research. I mean, the research you've done into the cage, I think it's getting close to something like 6 years of research into this.
Yeah, not solidly, but yes, over 6 years. So I picked it up about 2019. We have a friend called Casterly. He's not really on social media. He operates under Ghost of England on Instagram. And he's mainly a photographer. He's an academic, and he just went on an investigation at the cage. One of the last ones held there from Mitchell's ownership, and he just came back and he just said, "It just something stinks there." Literally, use that phrase. Myself, I moved to England early 2000s. That's when the cage effectively burst onto the scene. Yeah. And so I've all been aware of the cage, etc. And I always thought, it doesn't look like a medieval prison to me. So it's an area I'm roughly familiar with. So I said, okay, leave it with me. I'll have a look, see what I can find out about the building. And it all started from there, really.
Okay, so this for those that don't realise, this is the building known as the cage, otherwise known as 20 Colchester. Sorry, is it 10? Hang on, let's get it right. 20 Colchester Road. Is that right? 14, sorry, Colchester Road. In St.Osyth. I can't see it bloody say it. I'll get there eventually. But anyway, this is the building. And like you say, you go there and say a friend of yours says something up with this. And when you look at it, you don't immediately think, oh, this is a medieval lockup. So I mean, from what we'll do first of all, I think is we'll go through, I think, what lockups were, what they were used for, essentially. So when you're talking about this is a very rural community, a very small village in Essex, and do you want to just explain what a lockup essentially was and what it was used as?
Okay, we have a long history in England, primarily England, and effectively they were holding cells, from the social function, holding cells for naughty boys and girls whilst they were dealt with by the law. They were effectively outlawed in 1839 by the County Police Act, which really negated them, and it required all authorities to actually build new police stations. But for a time, from like the 1200s right through to that time, the 1850s, whatever, they were important functions in the village community life.
Yeah.
They tended to be near other civic buildings or actually on a main road out of a town, etc., as we have at St. Osyth. Locally, we've, when you think of a lockup, you'll think of a circular building, as I've illustrated on the website, as you see there. Yes, but locally within Essex, they tended to be very, very small square or oblong buildings. That's, the ones that survive in Essex are mainly brick built. There are some wooden ones, but if you look at them, they're clearly like wooden sheds, which obviously replace the
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking. So obviously these were usually kind of like an overnight detention cell, essentially.
Yeah, there's a holding cell really, where the drugs were held. Some locally in like Bradwell-on-Sea, they've actually got stocks built into the side where they actually locked, people's wrists into it to hold them or ankles. They're still in situ.
So what I'm just going through at the minute is obviously talking about and showing you different examples of these lockups, these rural lockups that were used. Like you say, a lot of them have a very similar design, very small, sometimes round, but sometimes just like stone built. And the one that I wanted to kind of focus on, because you believe that this last one I'm going to show is or would have been, you think, most like what you believe that the cage that originally would have looked like. You believe it would have looked something like this one. This is at Tollsbury, I believe.
Totally, yeah. Obviously, it's modern. But woods will not last outside in the Essex, especially in the coastal areas for up to 600 years. So it's been repaired, been replaced. It's basically on the site of where the original lockup was, but it would have intrinsically been a wooden structure. The problem you got with Essex, really, and this is why most of East Anglia has fallen into the sea whenever there's a high tide, is there's no rocks. It's all London clay and red crag. So stone locally is actually very, very expensive. And when you talk about 300, 400, 500, 600 years ago, the stones just weren't available.
Yeah.
And in my article, I gave an example of in nearby Malden, which was also owned by the Darcys, who, and Brian Darcy tried for witch trials in 1582. They had the building in town. They built the brick tower, which is now the new moot hall in Malden, but the rest of the building's gone. Because even though he was, at the time, Robert Darcy was one of the wealthiest people in the UK, he was a magistrate, he was an MP, he could only afford to build a brick tower. And he did it, really, just to show his wealth. And so in Essex, effectively, the original ones, you were looking at wooden structures.
Okay, right. So
they didn't have to be robust, because obviously you're locking up ladies, you're locking up drunks, not master criminals. It was just literally, like you said at the start of the conversation, they were effectively just little holding cells to actually local drugs.
With that in mind, obviously there are some question marks regards this infamously famous haunted building. And the one thing I will probably just start with is your research is nothing to do with the claims, the paranormal claims associated with this building. You're saying it could well be very, very haunted. That's not the avenue you went down with regards to this research in the slightest. You didn't really look into the claims of this building.
No,
regards ghosts and hauntings.
Absolutely not. I mean, my focus primarily was, I'm a great believer in accuracy of my research, especially the historical basis. And I took the view, when my friend asked me to do it, was, okay, it might not look like a medieval lockup, but it might be on the footprint of one. And that's where end of the day, I didn't care which way my research went. I couldn't care less, like they said, the lockup was on the other side of the village or in the churchyard or where it was. But what I was not looking at was any paranormal claims. I just wanted I thought, well, there's a witch trial in 1582. There were a load of women, victims, poor souls, whatever, got locked up over a couple of nights whilst it was on trial, all innocent or on Trump charges. I think it's important for their memory to actually try and find out, well, where exactly were they held?
Yeah. I mean,
rather than actually just because someone said, or there's a sign on the side of a building.
Well,
And
yeah.
for me, there's enough red flags there when I look at that photograph and I look at that building and say, there is something worth researching here. And that's what I really went and did.
Absolutely. For those that don't realize, the cage is famously, I suppose, associated with the witchcraft trials of notably a lady called Ursula Kemp. And there was one other lady who I think is Elizabeth Bennet, was also from the same village. So them two and 12 or so others were accused of witchcraft. Ursula Kemp was essentially a midwife, one of these knowledgeable women who went to kind of heal essentially others using various kind of herbs and things like that. And a neighbor by the name of Grace Thurlow accused her of witchcraft, thinking that, whereas before she was healing people, now people are becoming sick and dying. And therefore, in good old tradition of the 1500s, she became a target, her and others. And the cage, I will say it properly. I'll say it anyway. Was supposedly where she was detained before she was then taken to St. Clair Hall for interrogation and then hanged at Chelmsford, I believe.
Yeah.
So there is this supposed link, and here is, this is the sign that is on the cage itself. So there we go. So Ursula Kemp was imprisoned here before being hanged as a witch in 1582. It was last used in 1908. So far, so good. That's the story, essentially. Mm-hmm. And along with that are all these paranormal claims of evil and witchcraft and all of these things associated with this building. So that's the generally known story. When you was going into this and thinking, okay, we'll see where things take us, what was your starting point? Where did you begin when looking at this?
The obvious bit, I just wanted to see what date that building was constructed. I thought it looks fairly modern, and by that I mean it's not like an 11th century castle. It looks relatively modern, the late 17th century, by my estimation. So I thought there should be deeds, there should be records, land registry records of what it was held by. But that was a problem for me because there were two councils involved and each council say each other holds the records. And that's where I am today.
Right, okay.
Neither will limit to actually having the actual plans and all that, the deeds and records actually to where it was actually, which would actually give me that information. When I got a spare moment, I will actually go off and probably physically visit both councils and ask to see the records. So at the moment, you've got two councils playing ping pong with each other.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was going to say, just one thing I wanted to say is, you mentioned there's a number of red flags that you go through your research. One of them being that all of these lockups, or a lot of, nearly virtually all these kind of old village lockups that we mentioned are all listed. The grade 2 listed.
That's right.
As historic monuments.
Mm-hmm.
Is the cage grade 2 listed?
No, it's not. It is not even a property of local interest. It is nothing. It is just a house.
Okay, why is that?
Which is odd.
If this was a cage in a medieval cage lockup, like people believe, why was it not listed?
Yeah, right. It's a bit complicated because the way the system works over here is you would think automatically all old buildings are listed. That's not how it works. It's passive. Local authorities have to make a request for a listing. And that's why you'll find some lockups were listed back in the 1950s, some in the 1970s, and I think some really going into the 80s were actually listed. But it requires a local body, historian, to actually make a request for a listing. Now, what you find in St. Osyth is effectively the building, the pub, which is literally to the right of that little post box you can see, is actually listed. So you're trying to the inspectorate would have actually came out to actually inspect that building. The pub next to it is grade 2. So you've got inspectors going out to inspect the building. They've got a medieval prison 10 foot across the path. That's not listed.
Yeah.
I think it would raise flags. Personally, I could playing devil's advocate, it could well be that it's been altered so much, it's not worth registering. But when you register a building as listed, it could be like of historical value or cultural value.
Yeah,
and it's neither.
Right.
And when I spoke to the museum, they just said because it's not interesting. It's not an interesting building. No one's interested in it. It is of no merit, was the words they used.
So before the current state of the building as it is now, this was the original building. So we think around about 1970. So for a long time, this is it. This is what it was before we had the extension and the upper floor built and various other things from the 1970s onwards.
And you'll notice no sign on it as well.
Yeah, peel it all back. This is what you've got originally. Is that fair to say? So so this a cage? Is this a lockup? Does it what are the red flags for you that this is not a village lockup?
No, it's a coal store, something like that, or we store machinery, and that's the way I look at it. Tin roof. Okay, it could be a replacement roof, but and again, combined with the fact that it's so large as well, lockups just are not that large. Where's the windows or bars? You can't see any windows there or ventilation holes. This was just an outbuilding, and I know as you're going to show another photograph soon. It's not the only one in St.Osyth. You don't have to look very far to find another one.
Yeah, I think this is what you're talking about here. This one here, where you've got this is Colchester Road. So obviously you've got 14 Colchester Road as the cage, and then you've got 20 Colchester Road. So what in terms of just further down the road, as you can see, there's these two buildings virtually identical.
Yeah, and there you can see the little white building closest to us is really a replica of a cage. Those two builders are contemporary with each other. I believe they were built at exactly the same time. They were obviously built to the same plan, so therefore had the same features.
And the other thing as well, you included this on your website, where it shows the fact that this has been completely rebuilt. You got the modern brickwork on the right hand side and the original brickwork on the left, and the door's completely different as well. I would just mention. So it really was completely rebuilt, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, the upper floor story extension was built on it in the late 1970s. Give or take 5 years either side. And again, that building originally, the black and white one photograph, was not strong enough to support an upper story. So the way I look at it, would obviously the building was completely demolished, rebuilt with better bricks, and obviously the upper story added to it.
Yeah.
And that's effectively what you're seeing in this photograph.
And you mentioned this as well, so I'm just going to put this on. This is the floor plan of the cage. Now you can see on the bottom left-hand side, this is what that part, which is 10.5 foot by 9.5 foot. You're essentially saying that you believe that this is too large for a holding cell.
Yeah, it's way too large. If it is genuine, it's probably the largest holding cell in the UK.
Oh, really? That big?
Yeah, but then we're not saying about modern ones or modern examples, but like the medieval times, it was like just over a quarter of that size originally. If they are very small, and what you got to bear in mind as well, that St. Osyth is actually a very small village now. Imagine the population, 400, 500, 600 years ago.
Yeah,
you're talking about it's like a hamlet, a couple of houses. So there would just not be a need for a big building, a big structure. So end of the day, it's coming out of public coffers, so it'd be a small building.
So the actual, I mean, not only do we think this is the wrong size, it doesn't have the age, it just does not add up. And there is a question mark over the exact location of where the cage is, where this lockup would have been. Now, I'm just going to share, if I can. Now, Amy's Crypt, for those that obviously watching this, will know that they've bought the cage. And on their website, this is their website here, called thecage.co.uk. I'll just read what they've put. They've put the location of the lockup has been disputed in the past. mainly due to lack of records that date back to 1582. However, hand-drawn surveyor maps dating back as early as 1772 are detailed enough to feature the cage. When overlaid with modern satellite imagery, there is a building consistently marked across multiple surveyor maps spanning throughout the 18th century through to today, dispelling any doubt about its location in recent times. So this is their website. This is their answer to this particular question. There is another quote here. If I scroll up a little bit, there is another quote. It says, this is from Nigel Jeskins, St. Osyth Museum archivist, a member of the St. Osyth Historic Society. He's written, the site today referred to as the cage has been assumed to have served as the town lockup and has long been accepted as such by the local townspeople and council, with no evidence to suggest otherwise. Okay, so what, in terms of what is your answer to those statements on the actual official cage website?
Maps and damn maps. The interesting thing was in that slideshow, on the second image, where the yellowish map, that's the 1816 estate map, is they've got a big arrow pointing to obviously 14 Colchester Road, but beneath that you can actually, there's actually not that one, that's the
the one on the website, sorry. Yeah
On the website.
Hang on a second, let me go back.
It's image number 3 I sent you if you want a static image.
Okay, so is it, hang on a minute, I think it's this one.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
If you look on the slideshow, the big arrow is actually pointing to this map on the blue square, and they totally ignored the actual cage, which is a centimetre below it, and that's actually in their slideshow.
I mean, obviously this map here is is this the 17? This is the 1816 estate map. Is that correct?
That's the 1816. Yeah. What people don't realise about maps is, like as I said on the website, they're a very dark art. You know, unless you understand what you're looking at, you might have a different answer to what you're expecting. Essex was the second county after Kent to actually be mapped by order of surveys, but it wasn't mapped down to the detail that would have actually showed that actual building. But the 1816 estate map and tithe maps are actually more accurate for the early order survey maps. And the reason why, they're actually cadastral maps. They were built to, or drafted to determine property ownership, land ownership, with a boundaries layer, etc. And as you know, there's nothing that really focuses a mind a lot more better than anything else than money and taxation.
Yeah,
and they're very, 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 very accurate. And that's why I was able to overlay that map over Google Earth satellite imagery and actually finally work out an approximate position to where the cage originally was.
So I was just going to say, before I'll put the overlay in a second, but this, that tiny little red circle that you can see, as you believe, is the actual location of the cage. Could it have been? Could it be anything else? Because to me, it just seems like a very small square in the middle of a road. Could it have been anything else?
No, because if you actually look at the full map, that was interesting that the map that's been used is exactly the same proportions as my cut out map. But if you use a full map and just to go down the bottom left a bit outside the church, there's actually got the Guildhall in the middle of the road as well, which don't exist anymore either. That is actually a proper building, which was actually along with the Guildhall, which don't exist, which was actually detailed on the 1816 maps. There's also detailed on the 1839 map as well. And again,
so we obviously have got. I mean, just to go back one step.
Yeah.
Amy's crypt is saying, that the building that they own is the only permanent thing in all of these. In the old maps, this is the, on the left-hand side, this is the St. Osyth map of 1777. And where it's ringed would be the location of the cage, but it's not there. No. So they're saying, well, our building is there. So therefore, that's how we know that the cage that we bought is the genuine article.
Yeah. I mean, again, I've documented this. I mean, It's maps. The map they're referring to, the Chapman Andre map, didn't go down to that level of detail. Now, what it does confirm, though, is my initial thought was that number 20 and number 14 Colchester Road was probably built around the early 1750s. So yeah, it's going to be on that map, because on that map, people will misquotedly say it shows every single building in the UK, for the actual Chapman and Andre map. It doesn't. It shows every country house in the UK. Okay. What people do, they drop out the country bit. If you actually do the full quote they quoted, they only show large buildings. So obviously the properties at 14 and 20 were big enough to actually go on that. But a building, a structure as small as the cage would never appear on that Chapman Andre map. It was too small a scale.
Just very briefly, Kaza, thank you so much for the 50 gifting memberships. That's absolutely massive. Thank you so much. Please, it is St. Osyth, pronounced Osyth. Yeah, all right, old duffer. Thank you very much. I will get there eventually with the pronunciation of that place. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. But no, Kaza, thank you so much. Yeah. So obviously we're saying that these old maps, that's no defense, essentially, because they just did not have that level of scale and that level of detail. This is you've said that this 1816 map, this is the one which shows the, approximate place of the cage, that tiny red circle, not the blue bit. But then you're also saying that later maps, and this is the later maps here, I think this one's 1895 OS map.
Yeah, the first map at a scale which would have shown the cage, and it's gone.
Why would they have got rid of it on this map?
Because it wasn't there. But what you got to bear in mind as well is the building sat in the middle of the road. The structure was St. Osyth was actually getting bigger. So it was cleared in road improvements. Yeah.
So the literally is gone. And again, this is the 1839. There's no sign of it. So you believe that the actual location of the cage is there. You can see just on the left-hand side, this is you can see the mustard colored building. And you believe that actually this area where the road would have widened slightly, this would have been the original location of the cage.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I go into in my article, but these buildings, like also the buildings, were actually located in like central squares or meeting areas of the villages, etc. So what happens, because a lot of these lockups and moot halls, etc., are actually plonked right in the middle of the road. And you think, what a silly place to put them. And it's because originally there wasn't a road there. It was just plonked in a space. And as the road developed, the road went either side of it. So a telltale sign in Essex, at least, is the road will widen at the spot where the building was. And if you look at this picture here, this adequately demonstrates the road has widened. If you look where that white van is, the lamppost is fairly straight, then you see the pavement and the wall start cutting in.
Yeah.
And the same the other side. It's like a circular area. And the cage would have been plonked bang in the middle of that because the road would have diverted either side of the building. So again, if you look at the landscape, the geometry and stuff like that, that really tells you a lot of information. It pinpoints there was a building in that spot.
So in terms of the arguments from the St. Osyth Museum, people saying, "Oh, this has been in no doubt. This is that building has always been known as the cage."
Can I pull it back? I've been speaking to Nigel Jeskins. He agrees with me. So right. I think what you got there is really a misquote. It's from the website of St. Osyth Museum. It might have been taken from in October 2025, but it's actually older than that. And what you got to bear in mind of these societies is it's funded by donations. So they have to really toe the line. So what they might say publicly and what they say privately is two different things.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with Nigel, and he says I'm bang on the money. So and I've got that in writing as well.
Oh, I was going to say, in terms of, because that's very different from what's on the official website from Amy's Crypt.
I've got this in writing from him back in 2019.
So how, like I say, this is in terms of, because there'll always be this argument, and there's this ongoing argument about that where this place actually is.
Yeah.
And obviously you've said, look, this is not what I think. This is what the maps show.
Yeah.
And in terms of, that little red circle for you is proof positive that the cage is not the building that we know and love as the haunted location for.
The red dot is the cage. The blue one is.
So the blue is that. Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, and to go back, yes, those maps will all show those modern properties because they were produced at a date when those properties had already been built.
Yeah.
And they are big houses. So yes, they are on there. So the maps do prove that 14, Hutchins Road was there in 1777. Yeah, I agree with that.
Could that little square have been anything other than a cage?
That little red dot?
That little red dot, yeah.
No, the only one I found in the village on the larger map is actually said the Guildhall, where the Guildhall really is about twice the size, and that was opposite the church, and that's not there. That's no longer on there, but on the modern maps.
Right.
If these maps here are more about fixing boundaries and recording important civic buildings, etc., and that's why that dot in the middle of the road is, and the proof in the pudding is really what you got. I feel here is obviously 14 Colchester Road is near about the actual cage, or where the original lockup was. I like to refer to it as a lockup rather than the cage.
Yeah,
and that sign did not exist in the 1970s. It's been put on it by whoever built that extension.
This one. Okay. Yeah. So, exactly.
And what you've got to bear in mind is it was last used in 1908. Again, I cannot find no evidence of that being used that late. The County Police Act in 1839, which is like 60 years earlier, that effectively negated lockups. The local authorities had to build police stations. Don't get me wrong.
We don't know who created this sign, but are we thinking that this sign was essentially just created to add to the folklore of the local area?
I mean, the locals knew. Obviously, there's a memory, a collective memory that there was a lockup in that area, and both myself and the museum agree on this. Where probably the sign put it up as just a tribute to the memory, to actually let people know there was something like this in Osyth. It wasn't just a sleepy village.
Yeah,
there used to be a priory, there used to be a Guildhall, there used to be a medieval lockup there, and that's what the feeling is really. But that sign, is post 1970s.
So there is obviously an argument then saying, well, actually, the cage wasn't that far away. If we're saying that the cage is not there, and it's not, we're only saying it's what, 10 feet away, essentially, from the building, something like that. Yeah. So all of these, there'll be people say, well, that building could still be haunted from the witches of the cage because they've just traveled to the nearest building and that's why they're hanging out. It's
still possible. I mean, like I always tell people, anywhere and everywhere can be haunted. There's no rhyme or reason. We're dealing with something which doesn't exist effectively. Which the actual position everybody got. We've got to understand is ghosts don't exist, monsters don't exist, and research with paranormal is trying to seek out the unknown effective. So anywhere and everywhere can be haunted, and so anything goes.
And just going back to the famous witch trials of Ursula Kemp here, is there any evidence whatsoever that Ursula Kemp and or others, such as Elizabeth Bennet, who was also from St.Osyth, was imprisoned or detained, however you want to call it, at the cage in the village itself?
None whatsoever. And no other researchers have found any, and I've been unable to uncover as well. To be transparent, there's no record of where they were kept. Now, I feel effectively they were actually tried at St. Clears Hall, which is almost a mile away down south. Which was Brian Darcy's aunt's property. Some will describe it as Brian Darcy actually owned it himself, but my research indicates he lived across the road in the priory. He bought that, and Darcy lived there. So, well, you got put yourself into like 1500s. You can imagine what the roads were then. They were mud tracks. Were you transporting women in a horse and cart a mile to a manor house in the morning, and then a mile back in the middle of winter.
So it makes no sense then to them to be
you and I. That doesn't actually make, it's only a mile, but back 600 years ago, a mile was a long way.
Yeah.
For me, I've got no evidence of this. I feel it's more likely they were kept in outbuildings at St. Clear's Halls. That's what I think makes the most sense. Because don't forget, it's not just a matter of transporting them a mile in the morning and transporting them a mile back at night. You've also got to pay someone. You've got to pay someone for their time. You've got to feed the horses. It's all additional expense, which in those days, the good burghers of St. Osyth probably didn't want to pay out.
Absolutely.
They weren't expecting like 12 women to actually be arrested, were they?
No, exactly. Just to interrupt you, sorry. AV Stevie, dear God, thank you so much. It's like $100. That's immense. Thank you so much for helping support the channel. Must share in the giving, live to give to live. Thank you so much. It really does mean the absolute world, that, and it'll help me so much. Thank you. So we're basically saying that these big, like I said, these big deep dives you've gone into to think, okay, what is the facts? What are the facts on this case? And the facts are, we've got no evidence at all for the witches were actually held within this building, a medieval lockup. There's no proof that the building, which is seen as the floor plans you think are too big, it doesn't make sense. The building that we know of it just doesn't follow that this would be a medieval lockup. It doesn't look right. Plus, we've also got the maps. We've got an alternative location for this. Why do you think this is so important to actually push out to people the true history of places like this?
I think it's important for the memory of the poor unfortunates. As paranormal researchers, you strive to be accurate. So sometime, somewhere in the future, if they look back in your work, actually, this is important data. And the same for historical fact. It's very important to get historical facts correct.
Yeah.
And I know from my research, there's so many properties got haunted tales, which when you actually look at the backstory, just doesn't make no sense. I can name you a list of like 20 odd properties where I've researched, and what's gone on there, well, didn't happen.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got the same. So, but for me, it's important for the memory of these unfortunates that if they were, we know they were. We know 2 of them didn't make it. And again, it's like we know very little about even the trials. You mentioned earlier she was hanged at Chelmsford, Ursula Kemp. We don't know that. All we know is she left Colchester and she never came back.
That's interesting. I thought that was on record that they'd been hanged at Chelmsford.
No, she was sentenced to death, but there's no record of her being hanged, and might have been destroyed. But there's no actual record of that. All that's in the record is that 2 of the two that were actually found guilty did not turn up back at Colchester Castle, which was a county jail. Because back in those days, there never used to be a Chelmsford jail. It was basically assizes, which is right in front of the Shire Hall in Chelmsford now. It's not even where the prison is. But there's no actual record of her actually being executed, even though she should have been.
Right, okay.
So we don't actually know. And you've got to bear in mind that you mentioned like 11, 12 people were actually caught up in this trial. 6 of them died before they even got to trial because the conditions are that bad in Colchester.
Yeah.
So
it's honestly, because we've done the Pendle Witch Trials on this, and it's such a similar sad story of these people falsely accused of witchcraft, and then throughout history now, names, it goes down, and people just think, oh, Ursula Kemp was a witch, when actually couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, there's the Gem's just mentioned in the chat. And I was going to mention this. Ursula's skeleton was kept for a while in the Witchcraft Museum here in Cornwall. I believe it was later found out the skeleton was that of a man. Yeah, absolutely. I think 1920s, 2 skeletons were found in a garden in St. Osyth. People automatically assumed it was these 2 ladies that were hanged for witchcraft. They were bought and banded around as these are the witches. They're meant to have been nailed into the ground to stop them rising from the dead, and God knows what else. And all these stories. And I think it was an osteoarchaeologist before they were reburied.
John Warland, he's the guy, he's an ex-police officer. He actually would have paid for the testing and stuff like that in 2011. He's only able to get one of the bodies back, which is supposed to be Ursula's body, and she's now buried now in the churchyard at a secret spot.
But so
his DNA testing, it was two late Saxon males.
Yeah, I know, but didn't it just show? It's amazing, actually, like how these stories of witchcraft gets people's imaginations firing, and I think this is the tale for this story. People just assume that those two skeletons were the witches. People are assumed that this is, cut and dry. This is the location of the cage, and don't go any further and don't look into it any further.
People have a good story, and who doesn't? It's just what makes us human, isn't it? At the end of the day,
yeah.
There's no pointing fingers at anybody or anything. It's for me. It's just finding what facts can we find about this, and this is where the trail led me.
Yeah, and I've put it in the chat. People have got questions for you, Mark. But one thing I did want to ask you before we go into people's questions is that it now? Have you ruled a line underneath this research of Osyth? Is that all there is to find, or is you kind of quite happy now that you have unveiled this true location and that's that, or is there more digging to be done?
Well, horrible question. Laura and I got no interest in the property whatsoever. We only did it because of a friend. We were bored. There's quite a bit of information I've not released. I might release a part 3. There are my research is open-ended. I know where I've got to go. I know what I've got to do. And I think, though I've got no interest in it, I think I owe it to, for history's sake, etc., to actually publish what I find. So, from a personal point of view, I might never do anything again, but hand on heart, I know full well I'll probably write something else about it. Present some more findings I got. Yeah. And like I said, I'm not trying to prove anything here. I'm just trying to show you what my journey was, and give people the facts that I found. Let them go away and make up their own minds. I'm not trying to convince anybody, but I'm pretty damn, if I saw that information and I saw those maps, I understood what an 1860 state map showed, how accurate it was, and all that information, I know what I'd be thinking. But I'm not telling you, anybody listening now, to believe me. Look at the evidence, formulate yourself. But I just think it's very lazy when a presentation's done, where like pointing to 14 Colchester Road, see us being here down to 1777. Yes, I'm not disagreeing with that. I think it's built in 1740, 1750, so there should be on the map. But to actually point in the second picture on the 1860 match to 14 Colchester Road and say that is actually the cage, when a centimetre below it, you've actually got the real cage sat in the middle of the road. For me, it's like what's I can't, I don't know who created that slideshow. I'm not pointing any fingers. We've all made mistakes. We've all done it like at 12 o'clock and I've been very tired. I just, would hope really sometimes you need to go back and check what you presented to make sure you can actually back up what you've got.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
And I have a sneaky feeling at some point, Amy's Crypt may be watching this. Mm-hmm. So have you got, I know you kind of let your research do the talking in a lot of ways, but do you have a message for Amy's Crypt to have bought this property following your research?
Right. I've been following the restoration on Facebook, etc., and they're doing very good work, and I wish them well in it. But what they're doing, I think, is very sympathetic to the building, and I genuinely wish them well. Because the bottom line is they paid a lot of money for that building, and it's great to see someone's actually finally restoring it. But that does not alter where the medieval locket was.
Yeah.
And my message to them really is, no one's trying to attack anybody here. We're just trying to find out the true history of where the locker was located, in memory really of the poor unfortunates that actually tried and executed or died waiting for execution when they needn't be. And it's for their memories really. You know, that's really all it's been done for. And you know, I could have come out with this, you know, 2020, 2021, 2022. I just felt really enough is enough. Let's just get this out there, you know, and you walk away with it. And like I said, I wish Amy and Jared nothing but the best. I've deliberately not even gone into the hauntings. I've not approached it. You know, there's several things I could add to that, you know, my own views. But again, that's just my personal views. There's nothing I need to be given publicly. You know, but if they want to reach out to me, you know, myself and Laura, that's fine. You know, no issues with that, and I can discuss, you know, what I found, etc. And you know, does it affect, you know, the fact that you got a haunted property? We don't know. Myself and Laura's never been there. Even if we went there and didn't find anything, doesn't mean it's not haunted. It's just we've just gone there. They've bought effectively a building with an alleged history that only really developed in the last 20 years. It did not exist before. There's a gentleman locally called Wally Downs. He's still alive. He's in the 90s. He's been Ghost Club. He used to represent his official Ghost Club investigator. He used to live in the area, and he's written loads of books, documented every haunting over a number of years. It isn't mentioned in it.
Oh, so, really?
No, St.Osyth is actually
isn't that interesting?
Half a book on, and there's not one mention of that there being ghosts. There's loads of ghosts in St.Osyth. None of 14 Colchester Road. That's all I can say. You know, but again, ghosts, you know, anywhere and everywhere can be haunted. You know, I'm not denying that. You know, and that's, you know, so that's all I can say really. Like, you know, because it's not for me to say what happens next or nothing like that. I've done what I've done. You know, I can talk. You know, I'm happy to talk to anybody. Happy to discuss with anybody. I'll be open, transparent. I'm not got nothing to hide. So I've got no real interest in the property.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm happy to share findings. And you know, and that's all I can say. I'm probably waffling on now, so I don't really know how to answer you. You know.
So I've got a couple of questions here. One from Beardo saying, Mark, have you ever thought about looking into 39 De Grey Street in Hull? Their history portrayed doesn't match my amateur research.
It's been mentioned to me. Yeah, I've looked into 30 East Drive. Obviously, 30 East Drive and 39 De Grey Street, you say in the same sentence really these days, don't you? They're clumped together, probably wrongly. But, you know, we work on so many, we've got our fingers in so many streams of researchers. It's just real time. And it's whether or not, you know, if we have a quiet moment and someone catches us at the right time, we'll say, okay, we'll have a look at it. Okay. You know, but at the moment, it's not on our radar, especially as we live, as you tell from my accent, we live in Essex. You know, at the moment, that's a long way from us.
Yeah, fair. You know, yeah, it is. And also, I would just say, Beardo, check out Mike Covell in Hull, because he's a Hull historian and he has really researched that particular building. One here from Wes saying, Justin, does Mark think it's possible that if Coffin Alley behind the cage was extended, it would intersect with Colchester Road at the suspected original location of the original cell?
It always has done. It's an old path. If you look on maps, it is like a recognised, you know, old path. Effectively, Coffin Alley really is like the modern way we describe it, and it does like cut off. But yeah, it originally was extended. And again, he was, with regard to what APR says really was, yeah, he would have come right out on that pathway where you see between the King's Head and the cage. That's where it would have come out. And again, it would have formed what I was going back to originally to say, like the road was widened, like a cultural space where the community met. It would have, and so it makes sense that all roads sort of led to that area.
Yeah. Vicky Emming, just thank you so much for the 20 gifted membership. Thank you so much. So, like I say, so kind. Thank you very much for that, Vicky. Really do. It makes a massive difference. So thank you so much for that. One here from Heather saying, question, have you been looking into the Black Swan in York?
No. All I can say to Heather is, we've touched on it before. We would take a holistic approach, and we're not dirt gently, nothing like that. We take a holistic approach. We let it approach us any paranormal cases. So if they ever cropped up, someone approached us and they interested us, if we had time, we'd probably have a look at it. But again, whilst I'm aware of the Black Swan of York, everybody, if you've got an interest in the paranormal field, most people have heard of it. And New York is a very, a very famous place within the paranormal world. Then yeah, if the opportunity come up and we could give it justice, we would never say never. But likewise, we've never been asked, so it's never cropped up.
One here from my mod Tim, just going, not a question, just saying hello to a fellow Barry man. There you are.
Well, I'm not former Tim. You never say the Barry. My accent might have changed slightly, become more anglicised, but
thank you to Pomp for becoming a member. Thank you. Right. Just before we finish, because I've got about 5 minutes or so. In terms of, because I know my mods might have been putting links and things, but if people are interested in your work, in the articles that you've written about the cage, where can they find it, and how can they maybe research, do their own little digging into what the locations of where the true location of the cage is and things?
Okay, I put everything I got from documentation point of view up. Actually, I've not put the correspondence I've had with Nigel. Jessica's at the museum as private. But I'll put the maps, which anybody can go. You can go to the local Essex Records office. They'll hold these maps, the original copies, and they're really friendly and really helpful as well. The Essex Records office, I can't recommend them highly enough, and they'll happily make you, give you copies, etc. If they haven't already got digital copies, they can send to you via email. For ourselves, I mean, we're on social media as Paranormal Reason. Our website obviously is paranormalreason.com. But if you ever forget that type of stuff, just look for Mark and Laura, Paranormal Reason. We should pop up in the top 6 or whatever. And our website effectively is divided into locations. The ones we're physically involved in cases. We're not documenting all our cases, but the ones we think might be of interest to people. And I'm developing now the study side of things, where I'll feature the more historical research stuff. And the cage at the moment is actually on the historical side, because we've never actually visited it. We've sat outside here once, but we've never actually visited it, so it doesn't belong on our location side.
Yeah. Mary Jane Ginger, thank you for being a member for 7 months. Thanks for a great podcast. Thank you. I was going to say, if do you think you'll be invited to the cage? Once it gets opened by Amy's Crypt, do you reckon you'll be, first through the door to investigate it?
I don't know. I mean, I've never thought about that. We're not trying to knock on anybody's door to get access to anything. It's because then bottom line is we are up to our necks and stuff. So one more case will probably break us. But likewise, we never say no. At the end of the day, and if they do reach out, like I said earlier, we're very transparent, very open, because we believe in sharing the information. Yes, there's some locations we go to, we don't share a lot of information for ethical reasons. It might be dangerous for someone to actually turn up and park, might get run, or it might be involve people who are actually still got relatives who are alive. There's one case we've done. I planned as an experiment where I would document every single step of my research, and it quickly got to the stage where we had to bail out because, like what Laura sensed and what subsequently happened, ethically we could not actually proceed with it. But where we're able to, and we don't believe there's an ethical case for not saying anything, we will be very transparent, or we'll point people in the right direction. This is what we would do if we was in your shoes. We're quite helpful. We've got no axe to grind. We're not trying to sell anything. We sell no merchandise. We are what we are, effectively.
And that's it. That's a rare thing, to be honest. And you mentioned you're going to, you've got a lot of research going on at the minute. Is there anything you can reveal in terms of what you're looking into, or is it a particular building, or is it an area that you're looking into that's going to fill your time at the minute?
There's a couple. I mean, obviously, you never really walk away from a case, really. The Orford Castle has been coming up as discussion, really. But our latest new one, which is bubbling under, which don't raise your eyebrows, Mothman in Essex.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. And there's so many synchronicities, how we've been involved, dragged into it and stuff like that. It's how do I start writing about it? It's just so much over something which you like. What's Mothman doing over here? But of course, we have Owlman in the UK, don't we?
Well, there's a lot of cryptid legends in the UK. I was speaking. you know, to a number of people, there are a lot of various strange things that are meant to have been seen in lots of locations around the country. But it's interesting you got the Mothman.
Yeah, and in this particular case, I've isolated 6 independent spottings of Mothman or whatever it is over the last 30 years. There was one location by 6 independent witnesses.
That's cool, and it's wow.
Who actually witnessed the same event independently.
Oh, that's awesome as well. That's really good. That's can I just Vicky Emming, dear God, 100 Australian dollars. Thank you so much from everyone in the chat. Vicky, you're so generous. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, lots of people saying how awesome you are. Absolutely. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for helping the podcast. It really does mean a huge deal. So thank you so much. Hang on. Avi Stevens, is that the Owlman of Mormon?
That's one of them, but there's several Owlmans if you actually do a little bit of digging, you know. But Owlman, you know, Mothman, are we talking about the same thing? You know, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, same thing, Yeti.
I love that. I love that you go from really technical maps and things to work out the location of the cage, and now you're going into cryptids and mad stuff.
That's why I'm a bit embarrassed about it, but that's what literally I'm working on at the moment. You know, we're both working on at the moment because of things of irons in the fire, you know. But it's a bit more complicated because one of the property owner landowners wants to write their own thing about it, and anyway, they don't want to step on his toes. You know, let them get on with it. But it's still stuff, you know, we're looking into. There's still synchronicities cropping up, etc. I think it's too big for us to ignore. And like I said, the problem with the paranormal sometimes, you know, the very definition is beyond normal. So anything could actually happen if you study this field. So sometimes just go with it. You know, you might end up in Costa, or you might end up in a dark forest with 2 red eyes staring at you. You just don't know.
Sky Talker, thank you so much for your gift of membership as well. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Sky. Absolutely. There's Tim saying, you know, we need Mark back on for follow-up interviews about this. So yeah, so by all means, Mark, you are more than welcome to come on, whether that's follow-up interviews around the cage, follow-up interviews about Mothman. I'm guessing Mothman, to be honest, because I think it'd be fascinating, you know, and I love a good cryptid story.
Yeah, okay. It'd be a pleasure, Justin. It'd be a pleasure.
Yeah, Guy,
I'll get the license sorted out as well next time.
Right, we've got to the hour. Thank you so much for coming on, Mark. It's been absolutely fascinating, and you know, it gives people food for thought. You know, I think not just about the cage, but about all locations, actually, about all haunted locations. You know, perhaps you just need to do a bit more digging and a bit of research, and you'll be amazed actually what you find. I mean, your research took a long time, but I think it's a lesson in not taking things at face value. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think it took so long time and it worked so well because it was a slow burner. You know, it's just something I did on the side while I did other stuff. You know, sometimes you can do something and you just need to walk away from it, take a break, and come back with a fresh head. And it was that, you know, and it was, you know, the cage that actually was that type of project. You could just, you know, leave it, then 6 months later come back to it. I mean, one day I think it's like I walked away for 2 years from it. You know, it was you know, it's that type of project, and it was more of a case really. I still got stuff I can write, but at the end of the day, how long do I keep hold of this?
Yeah,
and that's why I decided to publish it. I did it as a Halloween present to the community.
Yeah, it's super. Please, like I say, by all means, take a look at Paranormal Reason. Find there's 2 articles from Folklore to Fact. Actually, let me just do a screen share so you can kind of see it. So we have this. Hang on a minute. If I put it on there, let's make sure I share it. I think that's it. There we go. Yep. So there we go. This is on Paranormal Reason. So from Folklore to Fact, establishing the true side of St. Osyth's Lock Up the Cage. So have a good read of that article. There's lots to it. Plus, there is also a follow-up article called The True Location of St. Osyth's Medieval Lockup, a further insight into our research. So yeah, please do kind of have a little look at that and read all about it if you're interested in this, because it is absolutely fascinating. Mark, again, thank you so much for coming on. Like I say, I think it's been truly enlightening, I think, for a lot of people about this building, you know, and maybe it'll make people think. Let's put it that way about all of these kind of the paranormal links. Whether you believe the paranormal links or not, that's not the point. It's where this place is,
Yeah.
and also history.
And it's important, like I said, to establish the historical facts, just for the memory of the ladies and one gentleman, I believe, who was actually caught up in the 1582 witch trials.
Absolutely. Right. I'll leave it there, Mark. Thank you so much again, Alex, and hope to speak to you again on a future podcast. Would be absolutely awesome. And whatever that is, whether that's the cage again, or whether you want to talk about cryptids, we're there. So, yeah. And so enjoy the rest of your night, won't you, Mark? And thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much.
All right. Okay, guys, that's it. Thank you so much to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for those donations. It really does make a huge difference to me and the site, and it helps the podcast massively. If you've not subscribed, please do subscribe. It's completely free. If you've liked it, enjoyed it this evening, thank you so much. Just to say, I will be doing a Chimps Tea Party, no guest, just paranormal related chat on this Thursday. And next Monday, I have the lovely Kenny Biddle is coming back onto the podcast. I'll be talking to Kenny next week. Thank you to all the people in the chat. I think there's about 150 or so of you through this evening. So thank you so much. Jem Treadwin, absolutely right. History matters. Thank you. And I hope you've enjoyed it tonight. I have. And I shall see you later on this week, this Thursday. All right. Until then, night.